It's Chantel with Wildberry Quilting, and today we are doing our zipper pull project bags. And these are great for cross stitch or for quilty projects or really anything. There are tons of different uses for these very cute little zipper bags. So, what are you going to need to get started? First, you're going to need some kind of fun vinyl. I usually get the 4mm, I think is what it's labeled. I will put links down in the description to some of the different vinyls that I've gotten. And there are a ton of different really cool options. You will also need zippers. These are 14-inch zippers. That is what I recommend. And I got a massive bag. I think there's like 80 of them in here for like $10 or $15. I will also link those down below for you. You're also going to need a 1/2 yard of fabric for the outside of your bag and a fat quarter for the inside of your bag. Now, I generally like to use a lighter color to be the inside of my bag and a darker color for the outside of my bag. I just think that that allows the vinyl pieces to really shine a lot more if they are against a lighter color fabric. But feel free to do it however you prefer. And I will link fatquartershop in the comments because I'm an affiliate now and they have tons of really cool fabrics to choose from. That's where I got the fabric for this one. This is Bev McCullough, and this is one of her lines, and you can see it better on the back. And then this one along the edge, I think, was something from Corey Yoder, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. It's been a while. Oh, yes. And of course, these fun little zipper pulls. All right, let's get started. So first, I'm starting out with a piece of scrap batting, and I have this cut roughly to 14 by about 12.5. You don't really want to go any smaller than that, but it's okay to be a little bit larger. Then I'm going to take my fabrics that I plan to use. So this is the fabric that I plan to use for the back of my bag, and it will also be the front outside of my bag. But right now we're going to cut the backing. So I'm going to use my piece of batting just kind of as a guide so I know how much to cut. And I'm leaving some extra over here. This is my salvage. I just want to cut it a little bit larger, just like you would when you are cutting the backing for a quilt. We don't have to measure this out or anything. It's all going to get trimmed down in the end. Now, this is going to be the back, remember. I am going to turn that around before I stitch anything together. And this is going to be the fabric that I use for the inside of my bag. So I'm just going to cut that, and this one I can have be a little bit smaller, just like you normally would. So I'm going to move this out of the way. And I still want this slightly larger than my batting. I'm just going to give that a cut. And you can certainly use a ruler to do that if you want your remaining fabric to have a nice straight edge, but I'm not too worried about it right now. All right, so once you have your fabric laying down the direction that you want it, you're just going to trim that up and put your extra fabric off to the side. And then we're going to pull out our backing fabric, and we want that one to be face down. I'm going to take our batting. It's going to be face up for our batting. And there is two sides to batting. There is a right and a wrong side, or a front and a back. And that's the piece I cut wrong. And then we're going to take our front piece and lay that right over the top. And feel free to press this. I definitely have some creases in here that would probably be better if I pressed it. So now we're going to bring this over to the machine and just free motion quilt. We can just do lines, or we could do any kind of free motion design that we want. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to do lines. All right, so you can certainly use a guide for this, or use an erasable pen, maybe a water soluble or a heat erase pen, but I'm not that picky, so I'm just going to wing it. And my lines usually come out fairly okay, so I'm not that worried about it. This is also going to be on the back of the bag. You'll see it, and on the inside of the bag, but obviously you don't generally see the inside of the bag too much. So, and usually you're looking at the front of the bag. So while this will be noticeable, it won't be glaring. And certainly if you have a design like this, you can use that kind of as a guide to help you get it more straight too. And really you're just looking to make sure that you come off of the batting on either side. So there's nothing precise here as far as how far you need to go. Just as long as you start before the batting and end after the batting. And I can feel it. I can also kind of see it too, but I can feel where the batting is on this. And then we just turn this around this way and get it from the other side. And there's really nothing to stress out about here. It's really simple, so. All right, now we can take this back over to our cutting table and trim it up. And I'm just going to grab my ruler and kind of feel where the edge of my batting is, which I can feel it's all right along here. And I am going to trim it as close to that as I can while still kind of keeping my design straight. And I can, on this particular one, the design does kind of matter because you'll be able to tell if this is uneven. So I'm just lining it up with the points in my chevron. And I can just trim away from here. Now, I'm not using these lines yet, but I will use them later. And now we have a nice straight edge, so I'm just going to line that up and make sure that I am past my batting. I probably need to come over just a little bit, maybe a little bit more, and still keep it straight with my batting, but not run into my camera. Let's move it back a little bit. I'm still bumping that camera. And I think I'm just going to have to move the whole thing over to get. All right. That's probably pretty good. And if there's just a tiny bit past, it's not where you don't have batting, it's okay at this point because we will be doing a second trim. Move it over a little bit more. I want to keep as much of my width as I possibly can. So, because as I said, we are going to be trimming down again later. All right, so this looks pretty good. Now we're ready to move on to the next step, which is going to be cutting our vinyl. Now, this is actually pretty wide, and I don't want to turn it this way. If you have a pattern that is not directional, then you certainly could turn it this way and use it like that. And generally, that's what I would do. But this is definitely directional, so I'm going to have to cut it to the width I want and then trim it down some too, probably around there. This is 11.5 inches, and that's what I want, is 11.5 inches. So we're going to use our map, or our mat, and count out 11.5 inches. Or just use our ruler to count it out for us, which it looks like it's right about there. So just going to line this up. And you just want, when you're doing this, you want to make sure that your vinyl is lined up all the way along one of these lines and that the edge is lined up. Or give yourself a nice straight cut edge if you need to, if that's kind of ragged on the end. And then now I've got 11.5 inches, and I need it to be this way, 7.5 inches. So in height, 7.5 inches. So again, I'm just going to lay it out like this. Use this guy to measure 7.5 right there. So there we go. And then this I can use in a different project, so just set that off to the side. Maybe make a smaller zippy pouch, or we might actually come up with another use for this in a later video, but that'll be a surprise. All right, so now I have my fabric that I used for the backing. I want to also use this as the front sides. And I'm going to cut 4 2-inch wide strips. And they just need to be 4-inch by around 8-inch would be good. So that is what I'm going to do. And cut this about 8 inches. There we go. That one's a little bit longer, and that's fine. That's not a big deal. We just need it to be longer than this one, which of course it is, since we cut this at 7.5 and that's at 8. Next, we are also going to cut the pieces for our top and bottom. Now our bottom piece, we want 2 3-inch strips. And for our top piece, we want 4 2-inch by 14-inch strips. And your bottom piece that was 3 inches also should have been 14 inches long. And you can probably tell this strip is a lot longer than 14 inches, but that's fine. I'll just have some extra left over for around our zipper. Now we are going to attach our strips to the sides of our vinyl. And we want these short sides is what we are attaching first. Now, it can be helpful to clip these down using clips. You definitely do not want to use pins. Clips are the way to go with this. And if you decide to do that, you're just going to clip them into place like this and go from one side down to the other. And I highly recommend having something like this Seam So Easy guide, not for the guide part of it, but because this helps the vinyl move smoothly on your machine. At least it does for me. It works really well. And I'm just going to sew this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And for most of this, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch. And I actually made a big mistake here. One of the first things you want to do is to adjust your stitch length, which I forgot to do, but that's not a problem. Normally my machine goes at a 2.5, and I'm just going to put that up to a 3.5. I just don't recommend going anything higher than 4, because then your stitches get very far apart. But you can see here the difference between the 2.5 and how close the stitches are here, and the 3.5 and how far they are here. It's not a big difference, but it does make a difference in how many holes you are putting through your vinyl. And you want to put as few holes in your vinyl as you can. Now I'm going to just flip both sides out and make sure that I have it pulled nicely, not tight. You don't want to yank on this because you will damage your vinyl. So just gently make sure that you don't have any creases and that it's pulled evenly. And then we're just going to do a quick top stitch on that. And I usually do about an 1/8 inch top stitch on mine. And you can see how easily that vinyl just glides through here. I don't have any paper that I'm putting on this or anything else. And I'm not even using a Teflon foot or anything. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm not going to bother clipping this one because I can do it without it, but it can be kind of slippery, so you don't have to be a hero. And it will certainly keep your vinyl straighter if you are clipping. But I've done enough of these that I feel confident in my ability to do it without clipping. And of course, when I say that, that's when my bottom fabric starts shifting out on me. And then we're just going to pull that over just like we did on the other side. Just gently, not super tight. There's no pull marks in my vinyl, so if if you've got pull marks in your vinyl, you're pulling too hard. And we're just, again, top stitching this down into place. And there we go. Now I'm going to bring this back and I'm going to trim these two parts. I won't do that on camera because I'm sure you know what trimming looks like, but I'm just going to use my ruler to make sure that these pieces of fabric are completely straight with my vinyl. So now this is all trimmed up and it's nice, and I want to make sure that if my vinyl is directional or my fabric is directional, that I am attaching this fabric to the bottom. This is my 3-inch wide strip that should be at least 14 inches long. And I am going to do the exact same thing with this, except for along the bottom. And again, don't be afraid to use clips here if you need them, because they certainly can be helpful. And it'll help you make sure that your fabric doesn't roll up on you too. Because sometimes this vinyl generally comes in a roll, and that can kind of make it roll up sometimes. And don't worry about that roll that's in the vinyl, because by the time you get done with this, it's going to be on your fabric bag, and your bag, just using it will help flatten that out. And there we go. And you see I have just some extra fabric here on the end because I made mine a little extra long. And I'm going to go back through and pull this over just like we did on the sides. And we're going to top stitch that down as well. And just as I go, I'm making sure that nothing of the fabric underneath is pulled up, because we don't want any folds or tucks. Now, if you do not have one of these guides to help, or a Teflon foot, to help make this vinyl glide through your machine so easily, you can also use tissue paper over the top of the vinyl. And then when you get done with it, you just peel the tissue paper off, but you will have some little bits of paper that you'll kind of have to pick out of the seams. All right, so that's coming along. I'm going to trim this up again, and we're going to work on our zipper. All right, so now the front of our bag looks like this, and is starting to look like a vinyl zippy pouch. Now we're going to work on our zipper, but we need to pay attention to how long this is. I start with a 14-inch zipper, and then I kind of hold it up here and see where I want it to be on my bag. I want to have just a little bit of room on either side, about an inch, more if you want it to be. It's really personal preference, but I like about an inch from either side. So I just trimmed either side down accordingly. You do have to be careful, because without the sides on it, your zipper could just pull off. So just be careful at this particular step and we will quickly remedy that so that it can't fall off. That is where these little scraps come into play, and they are very simple to use. I have switched over to a straight stitch presser foot, which is just the regular one that comes on your sewing machine when you first get it. The other one that I had that I was using earlier is a perfect 1/4 inch foot, and it's not necessary for this project. All right, so I am actually going to stitch this one, the zipper, at 1/2 inch seam allowance, not at 1/4. And I am going to reverse and stitch back over that again. So now we've got this, and we can fold it back, and you see this is closed off now, so it's not going to fall off the end anymore. It's secured. I do like to do a little bit of top stitching here though. So I am going to do that 1/8 inch top stitch. Now I will say that you probably want to put your stitch length back to 2.5 or whatever your regular stitch length is. But the 3.5 isn't that bothersome to me right here. I did switch mine back to a 2.5 now though. And your sewing machine might be a little bit different. The numbers might be a little different on yours. For me, the difference is 2 clicks. All right, so this is all secured in there on both sides. And we're going to switch our presser foot to our zipper foot. So before we do anything else, I'm just going to take this over and trim this to be flush with my zipper. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. All right, so this is all nice and flush now on both sides. And I have not worried about the length. You don't need to worry about that yet. You may notice I like to do everything just a little bit larger and then trim it down. And that's because that is the easiest way to make sure you get things consistently even. Because you can trim it to the right size, but you can't add back to it. Now, I've switched over to my zipper foot, and I am going to start attaching this piece. And I do have my zipper partially opened. I'll probably close it a little bit more than that, but I do have it open just a little bit because I want to be able to easily unzip it. I'm just going to go along the side here. And I'm getting pretty close to my zipper now. Actually, I probably want to unzip it just a little bit more because I need to have some place to go. And keep going. All right. I'm going to put my needle down, and that lifts my presser foot. Makes it a little bit easier to move this zipper pull up. I'm just going to slide it up out of the way. Now, I'm just going to continue on. And this is really simple, a very simple way to add a zipper, and they don't have to be scary. I know sometimes they are, and I don't always like playing with zippers, but for these bags, they are very simple. And I will say that I bought a big package of these zippers. I think it was either $10 or $15 for like 80 zippers. So they are very inexpensive and you can make yourselves a ton of bags with them. Now I'm going to top stitch, and I've done the same thing that I did earlier with when we were adding the sides of the fabric to our vinyl, is I've just folded this fabric back over and out. That doesn't have to be flipped up. You get the idea. And I'm just going to top stitch. All right. So that's one side done, and we're just going to do the same thing to the other side. Now, like I said, I got a big package of these zippers, and it was like $10 or $15 for like 80 of them in all different colors. And I will link that down below so that you can find it. There are a lot of different ones available though that are similar, and you can get all different lengths of zipper, so you gotta make sure that you're getting the 14-inch ones. Or if you want a different size, so you can make a different size bag, you can use the same method to make any size bag you want. I like to have my zipper zipped up for as long as possible while I'm stitching this together. I find that it gives me a little bit more even stitching if I do. And then I can just zip past it. And there we go. Now we're going to bring this over and trim it down to the size that we need for our bag. All right, so now we have our quilted piece, which is our back and inside. And we have the front, and we are just going to lay that there and take a look at how our zipper piece lines up to everything. This is looking really good. I just need to trim off these extra parts. So I'm going to take this and lay it down about how I want it. I want to center my vinyl area over the top where my between my zipper. And I'm just going to grab my ruler and trim off the excess on the side. And I'm going to do the same thing over here on this side. We can open our zipper so that our ruler will lay flat when we do that. And it's okay if it's not exact. I've got a little bit of extra here. That's okay. We're still going to trim up a little bit more afterwards. So this is fine. I'm going to take this over to my machine and we're going to stitch it into place. All right, so we have the front of our bag facing up and our zipper is going to be facing down. And we're just going to lay that at the edge and stitch it on. Don't forget to adjust the length of your stitches since you are stitching over vinyl on this part. we're just going to flip this back and top stitch. All right, front of our bag is done. We just need to trim it up. All right, so we've got our back piece and we have our front piece. And our front is going to be slightly larger than our back, which is exactly what we want. And we are going to lay them over the top, making sure that it's covering every part in the front. And adjust it how you need to. And then we're going to flip it to the back. And while it's on the back, we're going to take our ruler and trim up the little bit of excess that we have. And of course, if you have anything inconsistent on the back, you can square that up as well. Just do the whole thing together. And I'm just going to check each side to make sure I've got everything nice and even. This looks like it comes out a little bit right here. No, sweetie, go ahead and go play. It looks like it comes out a little bit right here, but it might go in just a hair on that side. So I'm going to actually take a very small amount into my back as well, just to make sure everything is completely lined up. And we can flip it back to the front. Looks like I have, thank you, a little bit right here that I want to trim up as well. Somehow that shifted, and that's not a big deal. It'll just be slightly less. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the bottom of my ruler with my straight edge rather than trying to line it up over here. And now we are going to take clips and clip it all the way around so that nothing shifts on us. And then we're going to stitch around this. So now we are just going to baste the front of our bag to the back of our bag. And it's best if you do this starting in the middle of one of the sides rather than all the way at the end. And that's just so that your pieces, when you meet your ends together, you're a lot less likely to end up with a pucker in your fabric. Because if you are joining two straight perpendicular lines, it is much easier to end up with a pucker than if you are joining two parallel lines or two lines that are going the same direction and then meeting up together. Parallel, of course, being that way, but you know what I'm saying. Now I am just using the edge of my presser foot as my seam allowance guide. The main thing is just that you want it to be a smaller seam allowance than what the binding for your bag will be. I do generally find it easier to do slightly more than a 1/4 inch of a seam allowance for basting this together though. Here we go, we're almost done. All right. And as you can see, because I joined on a straightaway instead of at the end, there is no pucker whatsoever here. Now we are ready to attach our binding. Now for our binding, I like to use two 2-inch wide strips, and they are by width of fabric. So leftover jelly roll pieces work great for this. You'll just have to trim them 1/2 inch. We're just going to join these. If you like to do a diagonal seam, that's fine. I generally just do a straight seam and then open up my seam allowance. And that's ready to put on. So we are going to lay our binding face down on the front of our bag. And we're going to leave a bit of a tail. We want maybe 5 inches would probably be about good. And I like to line up the edge of my presser foot and use that as my seam allowance. Make sure we don't lose our thread out of our needle. And we're just going to come up to about here and leave just a little bit. We're not going all the way to the edge. And we are going to turn it at an angle and come right off at a point. Now we're going to take our binding and face it straight up at a 90-degree angle, and can stick our finger right here to hold it in place. And we're going to fold it back down over itself again. And stitch right from the edge all the way on. Now, this is the proper way to attach binding. There are some different cheater methods, but to be quite honest with you, I find this particular method to be easier, and or at least just as easy, and it gives you a much better result. And same thing as what we did in the other corner. And we're gonna stitch right onto our fabric. A lot of people will just try to sandwich their quilt or bag or whatever it is in between the binding pieces, the front and back of binding. But when you do that, sometimes it slides out very easily, or at least in my experience, it has slid out very easily that way. So it's easy to lose track of where you're at in there. And I don't think that this is any more difficult to attach it this way. It's one additional step because you've got to attach it going this way, and then we will fold it over to the back and close it up. But as I said, it does give a much nicer finish to it. And it's also fairly simple too. I also happen to think that it's a lot more durable since you are attaching it essentially twice as opposed to just once. And again, we go about a 90-degree angle and fold it down. I'm just looking for folding it right here along the edge. That's all. I don't need to leave anything extra. I just need it to fold there at the edge. And we are going to stitch probably about to right here. And then we're going to look at joining our fabric. So to begin with, I like to give a little trim just so that I don't have a long tail that I'm working with. Makes it a little bit easier to gauge where I need things to be. And I will fold down one part of it about halfway. Actually, I probably need to go back a little ways. And I'm going to then meet this almost. I don't want it to exactly butt up against it like this. I want to be maybe 1/8 of an inch shy of meeting it. I'm just going to finger press those into place. Now I'm going to fold my bag. I probably should have left a little bit larger gap here, so feel free to do that. I'm going to fold my bag over and meet up my two creased places. And I'm just going to stitch them together. Now before you cut anything, just make sure that it lays nice and flat, which this does. It lays very nicely. So at this point, I'm free to trim off these extra tails. And I like to just leave about 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. And then I open that up. And I'm just going to make sure everything's aligned. And then I'm going to finish stitching this down. Alright, we are almost completely done. Now I'm going to just take this and I'm going to fold it under like this and then wrap it around the back. And now we're going to stitch it into place. Now, I find it easiest to just go ahead and get it started like this. You don't have to go all the way around right away. You certainly can if that's easier for you. And you could clip it into place. But I generally just fold it under as I go. And what we are looking to do is to stitch in the ditch. And as I approach these corners, I'm going to stop before I get too close. I'm going to fold them under, and I'm going to tuck this in at that 90-degree angle. You see I have kind of a triangle point here, and I'm going to then fold this edge in, and I can grab my clips and just clip those into place. And I'm approaching this corner. So again, I'm just going to maneuver that down. I'm going to fold it over to a point, and then I'm going to fold over this piece as well and clip it into place, just like that. Now, if your stitches are wavering at all, if they waver onto your binding, then you may want to make sure that you are matching your thread to your binding fabric. If you see that you are doing more wavering onto the bag piece, well, you probably want to try to rein that in some, because you don't want to go onto your bag piece, because you are less likely to catch your seam your binding on the back if you do. But if you tend to show more of your thread on the bag portion, then you may be tempted to use a thread that matches your bag more than your binding. And I got that a little bit closer to the edge than what I would have wanted to before I adjusted it, but that's because I was talking instead of thinking. So here we go. Because I was still thinking, I was just thinking about talking, but my mind wasn't where it was supposed to be. So now we're going to clip this down. And we are getting very close. We've got this side and half of the last one. And there goes something. I think that's got to be like a blooper in every one of my videos, is that I drop something. I never noticed how much I drop things until I did a YouTube channel, and it's like, oh, I guess I drop things all the time. Oh, it's funny how you notice stuff like that. Always dropping things. Yeah, these bags go so quick, but they just are addicting. They're also a lot of fun to see what kind of different ideas you can come up with and stuff. Actually, I think that would be a lot of fun. If you guys make these bags and you want to send in pictures, my email is in the description box below. I would love to see pictures of the different bags that you guys make in this pattern. I think that would be so fun. And maybe I could even include some of them in a future flosstube video. just show off some of your pictures and what you guys have been working on too. If you're okay with me sharing the picture, send it into my email address that's in the description below, and I will do that. I will put the pictures of your guys' bags that you made in a future, either a future floss tube, or maybe I'll just make another video if we get enough of them. Just a video on that. All right, let's go look at our bags. All right, guys, so these are our finished project bags, and I am just loving the way that they turned out. I couldn't be more pleased. I can't wait to fill them up with new projects. And these fun little zipper pulls I got from fatquartershop. They happen to have them on sale right now, all of their zipper pulls, and also a bunch of needle minders too. These ones are put out by Moda, and I think they were designed by Kathy Holden, but I thought these were too cute to pass up. This is one with little strawberries, and it came with one that also had little cherries on it. And they've got a ton of other really cute ones on sale. I will put my affiliate link down below, so if you decide to head over and check them out, I would greatly appreciate you clicking through my link. It helps me out, and I appreciate that. All right, thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to see all of the different project bags that you guys make. Please send them to my email address, and I can put together a video sharing those, or maybe share them in a future flosstube video. We'll see how many we get. Thank you so much for joining me. Please have a wonderful rest of your day. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.